So what's up, everybody? We're back here again with another video. Today's video is going to be a behind the scenes look at a campaign spec that I did with Joe Freshgoods in collaboration with New Balance for his In My Bag series.
We're doing shit so big, we can't just pop it. Message. We're doing shit so big that sometimes we can't say what's going on.
The money, the cars, the clothes, the fame, and then once you achieve that, you really realize, like, that ain't really it. I can't give you no detailed answer. You just gotta be in your bag, man.
The whole goal for this was to have a kind of podcasty feel, similar to like The Breakfast Club and any really podcast that you see online, Instagram, TikTok, etc. So when I was approached about this, they kind of had everything laid out for me, and they kind of just wanted me to come in and make it look how they intended for it to look. And so I pulled a bunch of different references, and they had references as well. And I kind of wanted to think through it. I knew we would have two different segments. The first was with Babyface Ray, and then the second one was with Son of Vegas and Mana Leo. One has one person, another has two. But we wanted them to be distinguishable, like have different looks, but they still needed to look like pretty natural, kind of flat, like a 2-to-1, 4-to-1 ratio. And so within that, we set up for the day because we knew we would have kind of tight turnaround in between talent. And so just like I do with anything else, I kind of just think about, what does this look like? What does this feel like? And how do we get that? And I try to keep it as simple as a 3-light setup, which we had more than three lights, but we also had multiple talent. So typically when you have multiple talent, each person gets their own key rim or backlight to make sure that everyone is like lit in a way that, you know, is good to them. So for lighting, we had a pretty simple setup, and honestly a pretty go-to setup for most of my commercial work, whether it's photography or video. And it all starts with a base light. This is going to be our leveler. Typically it's like a 8x for me because most of my sets are pretty small, but if you have more room, you can do like a 12x. It'll probably work a lot better. But essentially I have this as my level light. So this is where my shadows are gonna sit at the lowest. And so that's usually an 8x. I'm a big fan of unbleached muslin or bleach muslin. I can't remember which one it is. But it's pretty thick. So I typically have to have a pretty bright light to go through it. With strobes, that's pretty easy. But for video, I usually do my 1200X. And that gives me the versatility to either warm up everything or cool off things. But it gives me a base shadow. And I usually have this wherever my key light is, just slightly behind, as you can see in the video. And then I have my key light, which were two P300Cs. And we turned one off for Babyface Ray because there was only one of him. And then for Mana Leo and Son of Vegas, we did two. So they both had their own key lights, but they're kind of coming from the same place. And we kind of just maneuvered as we needed to the key light once we saw talent in their seats. And then for backlights, we had my ADC kit. We used all three. We had one directly in the corner with a softbox, and that was pretty much the main backlight. And then we also had two more on the side walls that act as like an accent light on the walls to be able to separate talent a little bit more from the wall. But also we can open up that boring door and it can like give them more of a backlight depending on, you know, hair color, texture, and whether they have a hat on or whether they don't, etc. And we can turn them off if we need to. But we were kind of in a fast-paced environment where we didn't know what to expect, so we just wanted to have a backlight on all three, so, you know, we can just turn it on, turn it off without having to go set up a whole nother light. And luckily for us, like, we had a good amount of time in the morning to like really think through the setup. I had like my overheads, but of course, like day of, you don't really know what to expect. But going to the last light in the setup was a F22C, and this acted as a fill on the shadow side, but also mainly acted as an eye light. So not so much for Babyface Ray, but for Mana Leo and Son of Vegas, like because they're constantly like looking at each other, I wanted to make sure like we can still get an eye light for Stunning for Vegas, because when he turns and he's looking at her, like, you don't want his eyes to be dead. You want him to have a little sparkle. And I think, you know, they had amazing chemistry. So every time he looked at her, we could see a little bit of an eye light in his eye, which I think really showed us the emotion that he had as they were like talking back and forth, which was really, really cool. And then we also had our that light, the F-22C there, to like raise the shadows if we needed to, so it never got too dark. Like I said, I wanted to stay between like a 2:1 and 4:1 ratio. So as we, you know, progress throughout the day, things changed. We had a little bit of light spill that we didn't get rid of, so we just wanted to be able to maneuver. And I always tell people to just, you know, be overly prepared, which means it might mean like going ahead and setting up an extra light so you have it just in case, versus not having it. Then you got to take time out of the day and then you're running out of time. You know, a lot of times with talent, you don't really have a lot of time. And so I always have that light set up. So we had it set up and we were able to turn it on as soon as we got to the 2 people set up, and it turned out great. And I'm so happy that we had it ready. And that's something I kind of thought about beforehand, just thinking through lighting, pulling references and things of that nature. Especially like the Actors on Actors series on YouTube that I think GQ does. They do a lot of like 2-person setups, and so I just look and I try to figure out what they did, and then just try to make it mine. So thanks for tuning into this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comment section and I will answer them to my best ability. And I will see you guys in the next video, where we will talk through this Leica video that I did with my friend Noah's. They spotlighted him as they were opening their flagship store here in Chicago, and they wanted to spotlight him. And we shot in a bunch of different locations in the middle of winter, so it's freezing cold. But I am going to do essentially just a lighting breakdown for the studio portion, because that was really the only portion of the video that we got to like light. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.